The armory was quiet, almost unnervingly so. The hum of the air conditioning and the faint scent of gun oil were the only things breaking the silence. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Hale worked meticulously, methodically, with the Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle spread across the table before him. Years in the Navy SEALs had taught him one thing: perfection was in the details. One slip, one missed mark, and the consequences could be catastrophic. The rifle was heavy, demanding, but Hale had handled heavier weapons in harsher conditions. Sweat from a recent training exercise still clung to his forehead, mixing with the faint grit on his palms. He ran the cleaning rod through the barrel, wiping away residue from the last mission. That mission had been classified, but even in secrecy, Hale could feel the weight of responsibility. Lives had depended on him. They always did. As his hands worked mechanically, he noticed something unusual, something he should have ignored but couldn't. A faint scratch, almost imperceptible, inside the receiver. Hale squinted, tilting the weapon under the fluorescent armory lights. At first, he thought it was just wear and tear. The rifle had seen service. It had fought alongside SEALs in hostile zones, survived sandstorms, gunfire, and extreme temperatures. But this was different. It wasn't random. It wasn't the usual scarring of a weapon in active service. It was deliberate, carefully engraved. A 4-digit number, 4731. Hale's brow furrowed. He ran his gloved finger over the numbers, careful not to smudge the faint scratches. It wasn't stamped like an armory serial number, not laser-etched like factory markings. This was hand-done, hidden deep within the mechanism where no soldier would ever bother to look. Only someone who wanted it seen by the right eyes would have placed it there. He stood, holding the rifle up to the light, inspecting it from every angle. Every fiber of his training screamed that something wasn't right. He called in the armory tech, a young petty officer named Diaz, who approached with cautious curiosity. "Chief," Diaz asked, "you called me here for what exactly?" "Look here," Hale said, pointing to the receiver. "See this." Diaz leaned in, adjusting his glasses, then froze. That's not ours. Not from any serial logs I've seen." Hale shook his head. "Exactly, and it shouldn't be here. This weapon came from our Black Book storage rotation yesterday. It wasn't issued, and it sure as hell wasn't returned with any notes like this." Diaz swallowed. "You think someone planted it?" Hale didn't answer. He didn't want to speak the thought aloud, because if it was true, it meant someone had infiltrated the most secure parts of their operations. Someone with knowledge, access, and the audacity to leave a message in a weapon. He had just begun to clean another part of the rifle when the armory lights flickered. Hale instinctively tensed. The subtle flicker could have been an electrical fault, but instinct told him otherwise. It was a warning, an omen, a subtle signal that the calm in the armory was only temporary. Then the base-wide alert blared, a jarring metallic shriek that set Hale's teeth on edge. He looked at Diaz, whose face had gone pale. "Command wants us, now," Diaz said. Hale didn't need to hear more. His hand instinctively rested on the rifle, not for firing but for grounding himself. Something about the number, the flicker, the alarm, it all pointed toward the same conclusion. This wasn't coincidence. It never was. By the time Hale reached the operations building, the room was already buzzing with tension. Other SEALs were there, suited and armed, their faces lit by the cold glow of monitors. Normally, pre-deployment briefings were structured: maps, folders, objectives. Tonight, there were no maps, only a screen showing a blurred satellite image, a single red dot blinking intermittently. Commander West, Hale's superior, stood at the front, jaw tight, shoulders squared despite the weariness in his eyes. Hale had known West for over a decade. They'd been through hell together, from covert missions in hostile zones overseas to high-stakes hostage rescues. He knew the commander's composure well, but tonight, something in West's stance told Hale that this situation was different. "We have a problem," West said, voice low but heavy. "A big one." Hale's pulse quickened. He had already suspected it, felt it in the pit of his stomach, but hearing it spoken made the unease concrete. West continued, bringing up a live feed from a drone. A previously secure zone in northern Nevada had gone dark. No signal, no wreckage, no bodies, but intercepted communications suggested a mission gone awry. Then West dropped the bombshell. The last recorded signal from the drone contained a 4-digit code. Hale's blood ran cold when he heard it. It was the same code he had discovered on the Barrett, 4731. Hale's gaze locked with West's. A flicker of recognition passed through the commander's eyes. He already knew the significance. Hale hadn't spoken a word about the scratch yet, but West's next words confirmed it. "Chief Hale, you need to tell us something about your rifle." Time slowed. The room seemed to constrict around Hale. Every training drill, every mission he had ever survived flashed in his mind. He had dealt with ambushes, traps, hostile fire, but this was personal, calculated, and it involved him directly. Hale drew a breath. "It's in the receiver," he began, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "A number, hand scratched, 4731, not a serial, not issued by Armory. Someone placed it there deliberately. I didn't notice it until I cleaned the rifle this evening." West's face hardened. "That number isn't just a code," he said slowly, almost reverently. "It's a location." The room went silent. Every SEAL instinctively understood the weight of that revelation. A code, a hidden number, a location. It was a breadcrumb trail. And now Hale realized the trail led straight to him. Before Hale could respond, West pulled out a folder from the podium, thick, sealed, marked with a red stripe. The label read, "Operation 4731, authorized personnel only." Hale's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. The first line made him freeze. "This operation traces back to a former SEAL sniper, presumed KIA." Hale's mind reeled. The name brought a flood of memories he had locked away like a coffin he never intended to open. Memories of missions gone wrong, of a teammate lost, of promises left unfulfilled. Someone or something was pulling him into a game he didn't choose, a puzzle he didn't want to solve. And yet, the numbers were a summons he couldn't ignore. As Hale folded the folder and returned the rifle to the table, he realized the truth. This wasn't a warning. It was a call, a challenge. And the moment he answered it, his life and the lives of those around him would change forever. Outside, the base remained eerily quiet, but inside Hale's chest, a storm had begun. One thing was certain: the number 4731 was no accident, and whatever came next would test everything he had ever believed about loyalty, survival, and the invisible lines drawn in the shadows of war. Hale looked at the rifle again, tracing his finger over the faint scratches. Somewhere, far from the Armory, someone had put that number there just for him. And for the first time in years, he wondered if the war he thought he had left behind had never really ended. Because the game was already in motion, the operations room was tense, lit only by the pale glow of screens and blinking LEDs. Hale could feel the hum of anticipation vibrating in the floor beneath him, though he tried to mask it with the calm, measured movements of a SEAL. Every man and woman in that room was trained to handle pressure, to react decisively under fire. But Hale knew this situation wasn't like anything they had trained for. This was personal, calculated, and invisible. Commander West stood at the front, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes sharp beneath his furrowed brow. He rarely showed emotion, but tonight there was a shadow there, a weight he couldn't shake. Hale had seen West in firefights where lives hung by a thread, but the tension in his posture now was different. There was fear, but it was the kind of fear that came from knowing something was coming that even the best trained SEAL couldn't anticipate. West started, his voice low but commanding. "We have a situation, one that requires precision, trust, and attention to detail. Everything you know about operational security, throw it out the window. This is different." Hale felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard that tone before, the one that meant the rules had changed, the mission had changed, and survival depended on thinking beyond training. West gestured to the screen. The blurred satellite feed came into focus. A remote stretch of northern Nevada had gone completely dark. The area was a classified testing site, abandoned decades ago, off-limits to civilians and off most military maps. But in the past week, the site had begun transmitting small, encrypted signals, signals that their intelligence team had been tracking. 2 days ago, West said, a drone was dispatched to monitor this location. Its last signal contained a 4-digit code. That code is the same one Chief Hale found on his Barrett .50. Hale's stomach tightened. 4731. His fingers itched to check the rifle again, to make sure the engraving hadn't been a hallucination brought on by stress, but he already knew it was real. "Sir," Hale said cautiously, "the rifle, I didn't notice it until tonight. It was deliberate. Whoever put that number there wanted me to find it." West's gaze locked on Hale, and now they've done something else. He swiped a hand across the screen, pulling up a series of blurred images. A lone figure moved near the abandoned Nevada site. It was night vision, grainy but unmistakable to trained eyes. The figure carried a weapon, a Barrett .50, identical to Hale's own. Hale felt the blood drain from his face. The figure's posture, the movement, it was precise, disciplined, a former SEAL sniper's technique. The face was obscured, but Hale knew in his gut who it was. "Elias Ward," he whispered, almost to himself. A murmur rippled through the room. Ward had been a teammate, a brother in arms, gone years ago in Syria, presumed dead. They had held a memorial, folded the flag, watched his family mourn. Hale had convinced himself that it was over. That chapter was closed. But here he was, alive in Nevada, moving like a ghost through abandoned facilities. West's voice cut through his thoughts. "We believed he was KIA. We were wrong. And if he's here, Hale, you're going to be the one to reach him. The number he left on your rifle, it's a trail. He wants you to follow it." Hale's chest tightened. Following a trail left by a man he thought dead was one thing. Walking into a potential trap set by that same man was another entirely. But the SEAL code was clear. Mission first, questions later. West continued, pulling up schematics of the Nevada testing site. "This area is heavily restricted. It's a ghost of the Cold War, old weapons testing facilities, decaying bunkers, tunnels, and storage silos. Nothing that's supposed to exist anymore. But someone is using it. Someone with advanced knowledge of military-grade weaponry, and given the signals, the markings, and your rifle," he let the words hang. "We believe it's Ward." The room was silent except for the faint hum of monitors. Hale could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on him, measuring his reaction, gauging his readiness. Diaz leaned in, whispering, "Chief, if it is Ward, he's not just a threat. He's, I don't know, an enigma. No one knows what he's capable of." Hale nodded. He knew. They had trained together, executed high-risk missions side by side, saved each other's lives countless times. Ward was brilliant, methodical, and relentless. But Hale also knew Ward's code, his loyalty, his sense of justice. That made this situation even more dangerous, because the line between ally and enemy was blurred now. West handed Hale a sealed folder, the same red stripe. Hale opened it slowly. Inside were operational details, coordinates, and intel on Ward's last known movements. Satellite feeds, encrypted transmissions, and tactical analyses filled the pages. And buried in the middle, almost like an afterthought, was a message. "For Chief Hale only. Follow the numbers, trust no one else." Hale's pulse raced. Whoever left this message, Ward, without a doubt, had a reason, a purpose, and the fact that it was meant only for Hale made it terrifying. The briefing continued. West outlined the plan, a covert insertion at midnight, no air support, no backup. The site's geography was treacherous, rocky ridges, abandoned bunkers, tunnels that had collapsed decades ago, and the potential for hostile engagement from unknown operatives. They would be alone in a vast, silent desert with only their wits, weapons, and instincts. Hale's mind raced. He thought of Ward, what he had been through to survive, the enemy Ward had likely faced, and the meticulous planning he would use to lure Hale here. Every move Ward made was strategic, every action calculated. Hale understood now that following the number wasn't just a mission, it was a test. When the team finished briefing, Hale lingered. Alone for a moment, he stared at the satellite image of the Nevada site. The red dot blinked, an ominous heartbeat in the digital void. He remembered the last time he had seen Ward alive. The desert in Syria, the mission gone wrong, the explosion, the chaos, the screams. And then the silence. Hale had carried survivor guilt for years, a heavy burden he rarely shared. But this was different. Ward wasn't gone. He was here, waiting, watching, communicating. Hale's eyes drifted to his rifle, lying on the table like a silent witness. The engraved number seemed to pulse in his mind. Whoever placed it there had known him, trusted him, maybe even challenged him. It wasn't just a code. It was a lifeline, a warning, a puzzle. The armory team cleared out, the briefing room emptied, leaving Hale with West and a few trusted operatives. West's eyes bore into him. "Hale," he said quietly, "this is bigger than a manhunt. It's bigger than a rogue operative. If Ward is alive, there are forces, inside and outside, who would kill to control him or silence him. You follow the number, you follow him, and you do not fail. Not for you, not for me, not for him." Hale nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He felt the old fire of resolve ignite within him. He had been through worse, survived worse, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this. A ghost from the past, a mystery weapon, a code no one else could decipher, and the shadow of a brother he thought he had lost forever. The team moved to gear up. Night fell outside the base, swallowing the desert in darkness. Hale's heart pounded as he donned tactical vest, sidearm, and ammunition. Every piece of gear was methodically checked, every rifle cleaned and rechecked. The Barrett .50 rested across his lap, heavy and familiar, its hidden number a silent promise of the journey ahead. Before departure, Hale allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of the men and women who had been lost, the missions that had gone sideways, the mistakes he had carried. And now, Ward, the friend, the ghost, the enigma, was back. Hale exhaled slowly, the desert wind whispering through the base's perimeter fences. Somewhere out there, in the shadows of abandoned bunkers, a man he had loved and lost waited. And Hale knew that the number 4731 was the first breadcrumb in a path that could lead to salvation or death. As the helicopter lifted off, Hale stared at the ground disappearing beneath them. The desert stretched endlessly, silent, unforgiving, and full of secrets. He gripped his rifle tighter, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. Because tonight the number wasn't just a mystery. It was a summons, and Hale had no choice but to answer. The helicopter's rotor blades chopped the desert night, kicking up sand and dirt in swirling clouds that glittered under the pale moonlight. Hale sat rigid, Barrett .50 resting across his lap, mind running through every memory of Elias Ward, every tactical move they had executed together, every close call they had survived. He kept telling himself Ward wasn't the enemy, but something inside him warned otherwise. The numbers weren't just signals, they were bait. The team's insertion point was a rocky ridge overlooking the northern Nevada testing site. From there, they would move on foot under the cover of darkness, across terrain that had claimed lives in training exercises alone. Hale scanned the area, eyes catching every glint of rock, every shadow that might conceal a sniper, a sensor, or a trap. His pulse was steady, but his senses screamed caution. West's voice crackled in the earpiece, calm but urgent. "Hale, remember your training. Trust the numbers, but trust your instincts more. Ward isn't predictable, but he's methodical. Follow the breadcrumbs, but don't be drawn into the obvious. Eyes sharp, heart steady. This isn't just a retrieval, it's a test. Hale exhaled, gripping the Barrett tighter. Ward had survived against impossible odds before. If anyone could manipulate the terrain, anticipate a team's every move and leave them second-guessing themselves, it was him. The first breadcrumb appeared almost immediately. Half buried in the sand near a rusted-out guard post was a scratched number on a small metal plate, 473012. Hale recognized the handwriting immediately, precise, angular, and deliberate. Ward's signature. "Looks like he wants us to find him," Hale muttered, kneeling to inspect the plate. "Or maybe he wants us to see the pattern before he decides what to do next." Diaz crouched beside him, flashlight tracing the desert floor. "Chief, if he's leading us through this, he's playing with us. Every step we take, he's predicting, and we don't know why yet." Hale nodded. He had felt that for years, the uncanny anticipation Ward seemed to have, like he could read minds, anticipate moves before they were made. It was part of what made him one of the deadliest snipers the SEALs had ever trained, and it was terrifying. They pressed forward, moving silently, boots sinking slightly into loose sand, rifles ready. Hale kept his eyes on the numbers, tracing a sequence left along rocks, abandoned fencing, and remnants of rusted equipment. Each number was a coordinate, each scratch a breadcrumb on a path that Ward had intentionally designed. Hours passed and the desert seemed endless. Shadows stretched unnaturally, wind whispered in eerie patterns, and the night air felt thick with anticipation. Hale's mind cycled between admiration, fear, and unease. Ward was alive, yes, but why? What was he trying to tell Hale? And who, if anyone, was pursuing Ward that made this sequence of numbers crucial? The team reached the first major structure, a half-collapsed bunker from the Cold War era. Its metal walls were rusted, jagged, and foreboding. Hale signaled for silence and motioned for the team to take cover. He approached the entrance cautiously, Barrett raised, finger poised on the trigger. Inside, the bunker was dark, lit only by faint moonlight streaming through holes in the roof. Rust flakes fell like snow as Hale moved further in, senses heightened. The floor was littered with debris, old papers, broken equipment, and faint markings etched into the walls. Hale's heart skipped when he spotted it, another number scratched into the metal of the interior wall. 473013. It was smaller, almost hidden but unmistakable. The placement suggested Ward wanted it to be found but not easily, a test of patience and perception. "This is him," Hale whispered. "He's here, or he was recently." Diaz glanced nervously toward the dark corners of the bunker. "Chief, whoever he is, he's prepared for us. There's no way this is just a trail. This is a gauntlet." Hale felt it in his gut. Ward's brilliance wasn't just in combat. It was in strategy, psychology, in predicting how the human mind would react to uncertainty. Each number, each marker, each faint signal was calculated to provoke thought, hesitation, and instinct. He had to be careful. One mistake could be fatal, not for him, but for the entire team. As they moved deeper into the bunker, Hale noticed faint signs of recent occupancy. Footprints in the dust, scuff marks on metal surfaces, and remnants of equipment that didn't belong to their team. Someone had been here recently, someone alive, calculating, and aware. Hale's mind raced. Ward had been missing for years, presumed dead. Yet here he was, orchestrating a sequence that drew Hale across miles of desert terrain, using the remnants of old military infrastructure as his chessboard. Then Hale saw something that made his blood run cold. On a broken table, partially obscured by shadows, lay a Barrett .50 receiver, identical to his own. Faint scratches were visible, numbers etched in the same handwriting. It was another code, 473014. "This isn't just a trail," Hale muttered, voice tight. "He's building something or hiding something." Diaz swallowed. "Chief, what if he's trying to lead us into a trap?" Hale shook his head slowly. "No, Ward doesn't kill without reason. He's not an enemy, but he's testing us, and we're close, I can feel it. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from the back of the bunker, a metallic click, almost imperceptible, but enough to make Hale freeze. Every SEAL instinct in him screamed danger. "Positions," he whispered, moving the team into a tactical formation. Rifles raised, eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. The bunker was silent again, save for the distant howl of the desert wind outside. Then a faint shadow moved across a far wall. Hale's breath caught. It was tall, deliberate, fluid, every step controlled. His pulse accelerated, but his mind was calm, trained. He recognized the gate instantly. Elia's ward, alive. Hale's heart thundered, a mixture of disbelief and cautious relief. Ward hadn't fired a shot, hadn't revealed himself fully. It was as if he wanted Hale to see him but not yet engage. The subtle game, the psychological dance, it was classic Ward. "Chief," Diaz whispered, barely audible, he's testing you." Hale nodded, gripping his Barrett tightly. He had to understand Ward's motives before taking any action. One wrong move could provoke a firefight with no chance of reinforcements. As they moved deeper, Hale noticed more evidence. Faint traces of supplies, a makeshift communication setup, and signs of surveillance. Ward had been observing them. He knew they were coming. Every breadcrumb, every number, every placement had been designed for this moment. Then near the exit of the bunker, Hale spotted it, a small metal panel partially buried under debris. He pried it open carefully. Inside, a digital display blinked faintly, showing another sequence of numbers, coordinates, timestamps, and subtle instructions. 473015. Hale's mind raced. Ward wasn't just leading them. He was orchestrating a plan, leaving messages, guiding them through a labyrinth that only someone with his knowledge could design. And then the first real sign of danger appeared. A faint click from behind, a tripwire barely visible stretched across the narrow passage they had entered. Hale froze, signaling the team to halt. One misstep and it could trigger explosives, alerts, or worse. Hale's breath steadied. He had trained for this. He had studied Ward's methods, anticipated his tactics, and now he had to apply every ounce of knowledge and experience he had. One slip, and they might never leave the desert alive. He disarmed the tripwire with careful precision, nodding to the team to follow. Every movement was deliberate, slow, and calculated. The bunker seemed to hold its breath, the desert wind whispering secrets only Hale could interpret. As they emerged from the bunker, the moonlight revealed the desolate expanse of sand, rocks, and abandoned structures stretching endlessly. Hale's eyes scanned the horizon, every shadow a potential threat, every flicker of movement a possible signal from Ward. He knew one thing for certain. The numbers were no longer just a trail. They were a map to something bigger, something Ward wanted Hale to see, to understand, and perhaps to act upon. Hale glanced at Diaz and the team. "Stay sharp," he said quietly. "Ward isn't here to play games, but he's not here to kill us either, at least not yet. We follow the numbers, we stay alive, and we find out why." The desert was silent once more, but Hale's gut told him the silence was temporary. Somewhere ahead, in the shadows of abandoned bunkers and rusted ruins, Ward was watching, waiting, and orchestrating the next move. And Hale knew the real test, the one that could define everything, was only just beginning. The desert wind whipped across the ridge, carrying grains of sand that cut like tiny knives against Hale's exposed skin. The team moved with methodical precision, rifles ready, senses on high alert. Every shadow, every rock formation, every abandoned fence post could conceal a sniper. Hale's mind raced, tracing the sequence of numbers Ward had left. Each marker was a breadcrumb, and Hale realized that the final number, 4731-6, was likely nearby. The air smelled faintly of metal and dust, a reminder of the abandoned Cold War-era testing facilities scattered across the Nevada desert. Hale had seen derelict bunkers before, but there was something different about this night. The structures seemed alive, as if the shadows themselves were watching, moving with him. "Chief," Diaz whispered, crouched behind a jagged boulder, "I don't like this. Whoever he is, Ward or someone pretending to be him, knows us. He's been here, watching." Hale nodded silently, his eyes scanning the horizon. He could feel it, the unmistakable presence of a master tactician. He had trained alongside Ward for years, and no detail went unnoticed by the man. The fact that he was alive and orchestrating this labyrinth of codes, numbers, and markers was both astonishing and terrifying. Then Hale saw it, a movement on a distant ridge. A figure appeared, silhouetted by the moonlight, tall, lean, rifle slung casually across the shoulder, almost relaxed but impossibly precise. Hale's chest tightened. It had to be him, Elias Ward. "Hold," Hale muttered, signaling the team to freeze. Every muscle in his body tensed. Ward wasn't just alive, he was observing, calculating, choosing the moment to reveal himself. Hale remembered the last time he had faced Ward in Syria. That mission had gone sideways, a sandstorm of explosions and chaos. Hale had thought he buried Ward alongside the rest. Yet here he was, alive in the Nevada desert and clearly orchestrating every step. Ward raised a hand slightly, not as a greeting but almost as a signal. Hale understood instinctively. This wasn't a threat, not yet. Ward's game was psychological, testing every instinct, every reaction, every ounce of training Hale had accumulated over years. Hale spoke quietly to Diaz. "He's not going to engage unless we give him a reason. We need to follow the numbers, see where this leads." The team moved cautiously, eyes locked on Ward's distant silhouette. They navigated a series of rocky outcrops, abandoned guard posts, and rusted fencing. Every step felt like walking through a gauntlet. Hale could feel Ward's influence everywhere, the placements of numbers, the subtle disturbances in the sand, even the positions of old tripwires and discarded equipment. It was a breadcrumb trail with an unmistakable signature. As they approached the entrance to a massive bunker partially hidden beneath a sand dune, Hale saw the next number etched faintly on the wall, 47316. He traced it with a gloved finger, realizing this was the pivotal point of the trail. Ward had intentionally left this marker in a location that forced Hale and his team to confront the reality of his survival. Hale's voice was barely audible over the wind. "He's here, and he's ready for us to see him." Inside the bunker, the air was stale, heavy with dust and the faint tang of rusted metal. Hale led the team through the dark corridors, rifles raised, senses heightened. Footprints in the dust confirmed Ward had been here recently, moving with purpose, leaving instructions, markers, and numbers that Hale now understood were part of a broader operation. Then from a shadowed corner, a voice broke the silence, low, controlled, familiar. "Ryan." Hale froze, heart pounding. The voice was unmistakable. Elias Ward. The man Hale thought dead was here, speaking to him as though no years had passed, no mission had gone wrong, no lives had been lost. "Hell of a trick, Eli," Hale said cautiously, keeping his rifle trained on the shadows. "Or should I call you Ghost?" Ward stepped into the dim light, face scarred, eyes hard, but unmistakably him. Time had changed him, desert survival, hiding from rogue operatives, and years of isolation. But the man was the same master tactician Hale remembered. "You're alive," Hale whispered, disbelief and relief warring within him. Ward's expression was unreadable. "Barely," he said. "And I've been watching, preparing, leaving the trail. Only you would follow it, Ryan. Only you could understand." Hale's mind raced. Why leave the numbers? Why make me chase you through the desert?" Ward's gaze softened briefly, almost like a shadow of the man Hale had once known. "Because I had no choice. They thought I was dead. And if I'm dead, they win. The rogue elements inside our own ranks, they don't care who they hurt. They don't care who they destroy. I had to disappear, and I had to make sure the right person could find me. That person was you." Hale's pulse quickened. The weight of Ward's survival, the danger he had faced, and the unseen enemies plotting behind the scenes crashed into him. You mean the number? Ward nodded. It's not just a code, it's a warning, a map, a guide. Whoever you're up against, they're organized, they're dangerous, and they're inside our own country. Hale swallowed hard. Memories of lost comrades, failed missions, and whispered fears resurfaced. Inside our own country. Ward's eyes darkened. Domestic infiltration, Ryan, rogue intelligence elements. They've been moving weapons, running experiments, hiding operations. They staged my death to cover it up. They underestimated me, and they underestimated you. The truth hit Hale like a punch. The numbers on the rifle, the signals, the mysterious trail, it was all part of a plan, a warning system only Ward could orchestrate. And now the danger wasn't just theoretical. It was here, in the desert, watching, waiting. Before Hale could respond, a metallic rumble echoed through the bunker. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Footsteps, heavy and organized, advanced toward their position. The rogue operatives Ward had warned about had arrived. Ward's eyes narrowed. They're here for both of us, and they won't stop until they control the evidence or erase it completely. Hale felt a chill run down his spine. The desert night outside, the abandoned bunkers, the numbers etched in metal, all of it had led to this moment. Ward was alive, dangerous, and orchestrating a plan Hale barely understood. And now the enemy was closing in, and the first real confrontation was unavoidable. Ward stepped closer to Hale, voice low, urgent. You need to trust me. Follow the numbers, protect the evidence, and survive. I can't get out of this alive, not fully, but you can. And if you make it, you'll know the truth. Hale's heart pounded. Trust Ward. After years of presumed death, after the ghosts of Syria, after the impossible trail through Nevada, he had no choice. Ward's plan was the only guide through this chaos. Suddenly, the first shot rang out, not aimed at them but as a warning, ricocheting off the metal walls. Dust exploded around them. The rogue operatives were inside the bunker, professional, coordinated, and lethal. Ward motioned, "Move." The team dove into cover as bullets cracked overhead. Hale felt the weight of the Barrett .50 in his hands, familiar and comforting. He fired a warning shot, not to kill, but to create space. Ward covered him with surgical precision, taking calculated risks that Hale realized only someone who had survived in the shadows for years could manage. The bunker became a maze of chaos. Shadows twisted with movement, bullets sparking off metal, the wind whistling through cracks and vents. Hale's mind was laser-focused. He had to protect his team, trust Ward, and navigate the labyrinth while under fire. Every step was a dance with danger. Finally, they reached a narrow side passage. Ward glanced at Hale. "Through here, follow the numbers, I'll hold them off." Hale hesitated. "No, you're coming with me." Ward shook his head. "You can't risk it, this is your mission now, go." Hale felt the weight of loss and responsibility in that single word. But he knew better than to argue. He trusted Ward implicitly, despite everything. As Hale led the team through the side passage, Ward remained in the shadows, a phantom sniper, holding the line against unseen enemies, his presence a promise and a warning. Hale glanced back once, heart pounding, as bullets shredded the air where Ward had stood. Then he turned forward, following the numbers, deeper into the desert, and into a truth he could not yet fully comprehend. Somewhere behind the walls of the bunker, the man who should have been dead was alive, and he had set a trap, a test, and a warning that Hale would carry with him into the next phase of this impossible mission. The desert night had grown colder, the wind carrying sand that stung exposed skin and whispered through abandoned bunkers like unseen ghosts. Hale led his team along the uneven terrain, Barrett .50 slung across his shoulder, every muscle tense, every sense alert. The echoes of gunfire and Ward's stand at the bunker still rang in his ears, a reminder of the lethal precision they were up against. The team had split into two units, Hale and Diaz in the lead. navigating the rocky ridge and sand dunes while two other operatives covered the flanks. Every step was calculated, deliberate, yet each was haunted by the knowledge that the enemy could be anywhere. The desert was vast, but Ward's numbers gave them direction, breadcrumbs to follow, but also a trap for the unwary. Hale crouched behind a boulder, tracing the next number etched faintly on a rusted fence post, 473017. It was almost camouflaged, buried in layers of rust, sand, and scratches from years of exposure. But the placement made sense. Ward's brilliance was in hiding what needed to be seen only by those who knew how to look. Diaz leaned in, flashlight tracing the faint engraving. "Chief, it's clever. Ward's using the environment itself as a guide, and the rest is likely a trap." Hale nodded, scanning the horizon. Every shadow seemed elongated in the moonlight, every wind gust a signal. "We follow the numbers, Diaz. That's the only way forward, and watch every angle, he's testing us." The team moved cautiously toward a crumbling observation tower perched on a ridge. Hale's heart raced as he spotted another marker, etched into the metal at the tower's base, 473018. Each new number revealed another layer of Ward's plan, a breadcrumb trail carefully orchestrated to lead them through the desert without giving away its purpose. Hale traced the number with a gloved finger. "He's guiding us to something," he muttered. "Something important, and someone doesn't want us to find it." Suddenly, the night exploded into chaos. A hail of bullets struck the ground around them, kicking up sand, metal, and dust. The rogue operatives Ward had warned about had tracked them, coordinating attacks from unseen positions across the desert. "Take cover," Hale shouted. The team dove behind rocks and debris, bullets pinging and ricocheting like steel rain. Hale rolled behind a jagged boulder, Barrett ready. His hands were steady, heart pounding, mind focused. From the ridge above, a sniper shot rang out, narrowly missing Hale's shoulder. The desert had become a gauntlet, each step forward a dangerous negotiation between precision and survival. Hale scanned the ridge, seeking the source of fire. A shadow flickered, barely visible, moving with calculated stealth. Ward's training had taught Hale to anticipate these moments, to predict movements, to read the enemy. But this was different. These operatives were professionals, yet their coordination hinted at someone orchestrating them, a mastermind with inside knowledge. Diaz shouted from behind cover, "Chief, they're flanking us." Hale's mind raced. The numbers weren't just a guide, they were a shield. Ward's trail had been designed to lead them safely through this chaos, to avoid direct confrontation until they reached the purpose of the trail. "Move to the next marker," Hale commanded, signaling the team. They sprinted from cover to cover, bullets cutting the night air around them. Each step was a calculated risk, each leap a negotiation with fate. Reaching the base of the observation tower, Hale found the next sequence hidden behind a panel in the metal framework, 473019. This marker wasn't just a direction, it was a puzzle piece, part of a larger map Ward had constructed. Hale traced the number, his mind connecting dots across the desert landscape. Ward had planned every detail. The numbers were leading them to a central location, a hub that held the answers and the danger. A sudden metallic clatter echoed from above. Hale looked up to see an operative preparing to descend via rope into their path. The team reacted instantly, firing suppressive shots to disrupt the maneuver. Sand and debris erupted as the enemy operative was forced back, but the moment confirmed Hale's fears. This was no random ambush. They were being herded, pushed along a premeditated path, and every encounter was designed to delay, distract, or kill. Hale gritted his teeth. "Keep moving, don't stop until we reach the final marker." The desert seemed endless, but the numbers guided them like an invisible hand. They moved across abandoned testing silos, rusted vehicle frames, and collapsed bunkers. Each step felt heavier, every breath sharp with adrenaline and tension. Hale could feel the weight of the desert pressing in, a suffocating mix of isolation, danger, and anticipation. Then they reached a canyon, a natural choke point, narrow, with high rock walls. Hale spotted the next number, 4730-110, etched into the canyon wall, almost hidden behind a cluster of boulders. The placement was strategic. Anyone approaching without knowledge of the numbers would be vulnerable to sniper fire from above. Hale's pulse quickened. The canyon was a trap, but Ward had given them the key to navigate it safely. He studied the rock formations, predicting likely enemy positions, and signaled the team forward. Bullets rang out from above as they moved. Hale's team returned fire, taking cover behind rocks, but they could feel the trap closing. Every operative, every move, every ounce of training was tested to its limit. Hale's mind flashed to Ward, alive, orchestrating this maze from the shadows, watching them, anticipating every reaction. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Ward wasn't just alive, he was in complete control, and Hale realized the numbers were more than breadcrumbs. They were a lifeline, a way to navigate an environment that had been rigged against them. Diaz shouted, "Chief, they're repositioning on the far side." Hale's eyes scanned the canyon walls. He spotted faint movements, shadows darting between rocks, rifles glinting in the moonlight. The rogue operatives were professional, coordinated, and lethal. The desert gauntlet was far from over. "Keep following the numbers," Hale commanded. "Ward set this up for a reason. He wouldn't lead us into certain death." As they moved through the canyon, Hale realized something else. The numbers were teaching them. Each placement revealed a pattern, a logic, a method to anticipate threats and navigate the chaos. Ward wasn't just surviving. He was training Hale, guiding him, and preparing him for something bigger. Finally, they reached the last number in the canyon sequence, 4730-111. It was etched into the side of a collapsed bunker, faint but unmistakable. Hale traced it with his finger, heart pounding, realizing that this was the penultimate marker. The final destination, the hub, the core of Ward's plan, was close. But the danger was far from over. From the shadows above, a hail of gunfire erupted. Rocks shattered, sand exploded, and the team dove for cover. Hale fired a suppressive shot, instinctively moving toward the bunker's entrance. Diaz shouted, "Chief, they're pushing us into the open." Hale's mind raced. Every step, every marker, every number had led to this moment. Ward's trail was precise, but the enemy had adapted. They were closing the net, forcing Hale and his team into a confrontation that could determine their survival. Hale adjusted his grip on the Barrett, breathing steady, eyes locked on the dark horizon where shadows flickered and moved with lethal precision. He realized the numbers weren't just guidance. They were a test of endurance, skill, and trust. Ward had designed this desert gauntlet to push Hale to his limits, to prepare him for the confrontation ahead, and to reveal who could survive under pressure. The canyon echoed with the sounds of combat, the desert night alive with tension. Hale's team pressed forward, following the last marker, bullets striking rock and sand around them. Every instinct, every ounce of training, every memory of past missions guided them. And in the shadows, Hale knew Ward was watching, waiting, orchestrating the next move in a game that only the two of them truly understood. Because the numbers weren't just a path, they were a warning, a guide, and the key to surviving the deadliest night of Hale's career. The desert had grown eerily silent. The wind had died down, leaving only the faint crunch of Hale's boots against sand and rock. Hale led his team along the final stretch of Ward's breadcrumb trail, Barrett .50 cradled in his hands, senses sharpened to a razor's edge. Every shadow felt like it was moving, every gust of wind like a whisper of unseen eyes. Diaz, crouched beside him, muttered, "Chief, I don't like this." The last markers led us straight into the heart of their territory. Whoever Ward's protecting or hiding is here, and I have a feeling it's not just him. Hale nodded silently, eyes scanning the horizon. He could feel it, the invisible tension, the quiet before a storm. Ward had led them here for a reason, and the final number, 4730-112, etched faintly on the side of a jagged rock formation, confirmed it. This was the last marker, and it pointed directly toward a cluster of ruins partially buried in sand. The ruins were deceptively ordinary: broken walls, rusted machinery, and collapsed bunkers scattered across a shallow valley. But Hale knew better. Ward's plan was never random, and each placement of the numbers had been deliberate, guiding them toward something critical. Hale signaled for the team to take cover behind a low ridge. He surveyed the ruins through night vision goggles, noting every shadow, every potential vantage point, and every trace of activity. The desert had been stripped of life, yet these ruins seemed alive with danger. Chief Diaz whispered, "Look at that smoke. Faint, but there's definitely movement. Someone in there." Hale's pulse quickened. Ward had warned them about rogue operatives, highly trained, well-equipped, and ruthless. And now, it seemed, the final objective was guarded. The realization hit Hale. The numbers hadn't just led them to Ward. They had led them to the epicenter of an operation that could change everything. Hale crouched, scanning for entry points. A partially collapsed bunker offered access from the north, while a rusted service tunnel to the east seemed less conspicuous. The numbers suggested a path that would minimize exposure while still bringing them closer to Ward's objective. "North Tunnel," Hale decided, voice low. "We move in quietly, keep eyes on the perimeter, and make sure the target stays intact. Ward left these numbers for a reason. We follow them exactly." The team moved like shadows, every step deliberate. Sand shifted silently under their boots, and Hale felt the familiar weight of adrenaline tighten in his chest. The tunnel was dark, narrow, and claustrophobic, forcing them to move single file. Every sound, breath, movement, faint echo felt amplified. Inside the tunnel, Hale traced the last number on the wall: 4730-113. It was barely visible, but its presence confirmed they were on the correct path. Ward's meticulous planning had anticipated every obstacle, every potential hazard, every rogue operative that might try to intercept them. As they emerged from the tunnel into the heart of the ruins, Hale's eyes widened. The center of the valley contained an underground facility, partially camouflaged by collapsed buildings. Lights flickered faintly through cracks in the metal doors, casting long, jagged shadows. Electrical hums and distant machinery hinted at activity within. Hale crouched behind debris, scanning for threats. His heart pounded as he recognized the scale of what Ward had been hiding. This was more than a safe house. It was a command center, a hidden operation, possibly containing weapons, intelligence, or something else of unimaginable value. "Chief," Diaz whispered, voice tight, "Ward protecting something huge. And it's not just him. Look at the perimeter. They've got automated turrets, cameras, maybe more we can't see." Hale studied the setup. Every detail was precise, every defensive measure calibrated to delay or deter intruders. The rogue operatives had anticipated anyone following Ward, but Ward had left clues to navigate safely, if one understood the logic of the numbers. "Listen," Hale said, "Ward doesn't want us in here recklessly. He wants us to reach the heart. Follow the markers, trust his plan. Every step he made is calculated for a reason." They moved cautiously toward the facility entrance. Hale traced the next number on a rusted beam: 4730-114. It was a signal, a guide to a hidden keypad. The sequence allowed access without triggering alarms. A safety ward had meticulously built in for anyone following his trail. Hale punched the code slowly, remembering the engraved numbers on his Barrett .50. The door hissed as it unlocked, revealing a steep staircase descending into darkness. The air smelled metallic and mechanical, heavy with electricity and anticipation. They entered silently, flashlights illuminating the cavernous interior. The underground facility was a labyrinth of corridors, control rooms, and equipment racks. Hale's pulse quickened as he realized the magnitude of what Ward had been protecting. Digital displays flickered, showing maps, surveillance feeds, and encrypted files. Suddenly, movement flickered across the monitors. Rogue operatives had discovered their presence and were mobilizing. Hale raised his Barrett, scanning the corridors. Every instinct screamed danger. Every step could trigger an ambush. Then Ward appeared from a side passage. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but there was a hint of relief. "You made it," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." Hale's chest tightened. Seeing Ward alive, standing amidst the hub of the operation, brought a flood of emotions: relief, disbelief, anger, and gratitude. "Eli," he said, voice low, "what is all this? What were you hiding?" Ward gestured toward the control panels. "Evidence. Rogue operations, weapons experiments, domestic infiltration. They staged my death to cover it up, and now they're moving in to secure it or destroy it. That's why I left the numbers. That's why I trusted you to follow them." Hale scanned the facility, realizing the stakes. This wasn't just a personal mission. It was a chance to prevent a catastrophe, to expose rogue elements who had been operating under the radar for years. And the desert, the numbers, the breadcrumbs, they had all been designed to guide Hale safely here. Before Hale could respond, alarms blared. Automated defenses activated. Turrets whirred to life. Red lights flashed, casting the facility in an ominous glow. The rogue operatives were inside, coordinating an assault. Ward moved swiftly, covering Hale and his team, guiding them through the facility. "We need to secure the data and get out. Follow me." The team sprinted through corridors, dodging automated turrets and evading traps Ward had anticipated. Hale fired suppressive shots, moving with practiced precision. Diaz and the others provided cover, taking calculated risks that minimized exposure while keeping the group moving forward. As they reached the main control room, Ward began downloading files from a secure terminal. The data contained evidence of rogue operations, illicit weapons movement, and dangerous intelligence leaks. Hale realized the scope of what Ward had been protecting. It was bigger than any mission they had ever undertaken. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. Hale spun, firing at shadows, but there were too many. The rogue operatives had split into teams, flanking them from multiple directions. Ward gestured urgently. "The exit is here." He led them to a maintenance hatch, barely large enough for the team to squeeze through. "Move fast." Hale followed, heart pounding, as they descended into a narrow tunnel that led toward the surface. Behind them, alarms screamed, gunfire erupted, and the facility began locking down automatically. The desert outside was their only escape. Emerging from the tunnel, Hale felt the cool night air against his face. The desert stretched endlessly, illuminated by moonlight, yet danger still lurked in every shadow. They had secured the evidence, but the rogue operatives were relentless, pursuing them across the dunes and ridges. Hale glanced at Ward, who nodded slightly. "This isn't over," Ward said, "but you've proven yourself. Now you understand why I left the numbers. Trust, precision, patience, and the courage to follow the path, no matter what it reveals." Hale's chest burned with adrenaline and awe. He had survived the desert gauntlet, faced the rogue operatives, and now held the key to exposing a conspiracy that could shake the nation. Yet he knew the danger wasn't gone. The rogue operatives were still out there, and the numbers, the trail Ward had set, were far from finished. As Hale and his team moved across the desert night, Ward's presence remained in their minds. A phantom guide, a brother who had survived the impossible, and a living puzzle that demanded trust, courage, and instinct. And somewhere in the shadows, the enemy waited, unaware that the tide had already begun to turn. The desert dawn broke slowly, pale light filtering across dunes and jagged rocks. Hale crouched behind a sand-dusted boulder, Barrett .50 resting across his shoulder, scanning the horizon. The night's adrenaline still coursed through his veins, but exhaustion tugged at his limbs. He and his team had escaped the underground facility with the critical intelligence intact, yet the threat was far from over. Ward sat a few feet away, leaning against a rusted metal frame, eyes closed for a moment of rest. His presence was calm, controlled, but Hale could see the tension in his hands, the barely perceptible tremor in his jaw. Ward had survived years in the shadows, but the rogue operatives they had just encountered were relentless. And now, with the evidence in their possession, the enemy would stop at nothing. Hale broke the silence. "Eli, we need a plan. They know the files are gone, they'll be back stronger, faster. We can't just run forever." Ward opened his eyes, sharp and calculating as ever. "Running isn't the point. We lead them. We make them think they control the desert, but we've got the advantage: knowledge, preparation, and timing. The numbers guided you here. Now they'll guide us out of their trap and into ours." Hale studied Ward carefully. The man who should have been dead, the sniper whose reputation had haunted Hale for years, was now orchestrating a counterstrike against a shadow network embedded deep within the U.S. government. Every movement, every plan, every calculation was precise, but it was dangerous, lethal even. Diaz approached Hale, whispering, "Chief, can we trust this? Ward, he's brilliant, but we don't know his full plan." Hale exhaled slowly, mind racing. He had no choice. Ward's breadcrumb trail had been a lifeline. Following it had saved their lives. Now trusting him wasn't just a choice, it was the only option. "Trust is all we've got," Hale said quietly. "We follow the plan, we stay alive, and we finish this mission. Ward has set the stage, now we play it." Ward rose, motioning for the team to follow. He led them to a series of high rocks overlooking a shallow valley. From this vantage point, they could see the remnants of the facility below, the turrets, motion sensors, and collapsed structures. Hale's stomach tightened. Every element had been left as a warning, a challenge, and a test. Ward pointed toward the valley floor. "They'll come looking for the files. They think they have the advantage, but the numbers don't lie. Follow them, and you'll find the exact path to draw them into a trap of our making." Hale adjusted his grip on the Barrett. "And if they split forces, surround us." Ward smiled faintly, a grim expression. "Then we adapt: precision, patience, lethal efficiency. That's how I survived this long, that's how we win." They moved swiftly, using the terrain to their advantage. Ward had anticipated every likely movement of the rogue operatives, leaving subtle markers. Rocks shifted slightly, small dust mounds, even faint scratches on metal, to guide Hale and his team while misleading their pursuers. Hours passed, each moment stretched taut with tension. Hale's senses were heightened, every rustle of wind, every distant echo, every movement in the shadows a potential threat. The desert had become a chessboard, and every operative, every sniper, every rogue element was a piece in Ward's carefully orchestrated game. Finally, the team reached a narrow canyon, the perfect bottleneck for the ambush Ward had planned. Hale crouched behind a boulder, peering down at the valley floor below. Dust swirled faintly, signaling movement. The rogue operatives had arrived, scouring the desert, following false leads, unaware of the trap laid beneath their feet. Ward whispered, "Positions. This is where it ends or begins, depending on your aim." Hale's team split according to Ward's instructions. Diaz covered the eastern flank, another operative took the northern ridge, while Hale and Ward positioned themselves at the canyon entrance, rifles ready. Every detail mattered: bullet trajectory, timing, cover points, and the precise moment to strike. The first wave appeared as predicted, 5 operatives moving cautiously, rifles sweeping the canyon floor. Hale exhaled slowly, then squeezed the trigger. The Barrett .50 roared, the first shot hitting a turret precisely, disabling it. Chaos erupted as the rogue team realized they were under attack. Ward moved with lethal grace, sniper rounds taking out key operatives before they could react. The canyon echoed with gunfire, shouts, and the metallic clang of ricocheting bullets. Hale's heart raced, every movement synchronized with Ward, every shot calculated for maximum effect. Diaz and the others joined the fray, executing ambushes and suppressive fire. forcing the rogue operatives deeper into the canyon where traps Ward had preset waited, tripwires, collapsible rocks, and even makeshift explosives that channeled the attackers into kill zones. Hale ducked behind a boulder as a bullet ricocheted inches from his head. He fired in response, watching the enemy fall one by one. Adrenaline surged through him, but so did a grim awareness. This was life or death, and a single mistake could end it all. Ward's voice cut through the chaos. "Hale, cover the ridge, they're trying to flank us." Hale pivoted, Barrett sweeping the ridge, taking down two operatives attempting to gain higher ground. He felt the familiar thrill of combat mixed with the sobering reality that every life mattered, their own and those of innocent bystanders if the rogue operation extended further. The ambush reached its climax as the final group of operatives entered the canyon. Ward moved swiftly, positioning himself for precision shots while Hale and Diaz created overlapping fields of fire. The desert seemed to close in around them, the wind howling as if in response to the violence below. Then Hale saw movement on the far ridge, a high-ranking operative leading the final assault. His weapon gleamed in the early sunlight, eyes sharp, calculating. Hale raised the Barrett, heart-pounding, knowing this shot could determine everything. Ward's voice was calm, almost whispering in Hale's ear. "One shot, make it count. Timing is everything." Hale exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger, and fired. The bullet struck precisely, incapacitating the leader and sending the remaining operatives into disarray. Ward moved with deadly efficiency, taking down the rest while Hale covered their escape route. When the last shot rang out, silence fell over the canyon. The rogue operatives were neutralized and the desert seemed to breathe again. Hale lowered the Barrett, chest heaving, adrenaline still high. Diaz emerged from cover, eyes wide but alive. Ward approached Hale, eyes hard but calm. "You did well," he said quietly. "You followed the numbers, you trusted instinct. That's what it takes to survive and to finish this mission." Hale felt a surge of emotion, relief, exhaustion, awe. The desert had been a gauntlet, a trial by fire, and they had survived. But he also knew this was only the beginning. The rogue network was vast, and while this confrontation had been decisive, the intelligence they had secured would expose threats far beyond the desert. Hale exhaled, finally allowing himself a moment of reprieve. Ward clapped a hand on his shoulder, firm, reassuring. "The numbers brought you here, but now the real work begins. This isn't just survival, it's the beginning of justice." Hale nodded, looking out over the desert that had tested every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage he possessed. Somewhere in the distance, the sun rose, casting long shadows over dunes and ruins, illuminating the path they had followed, the battles they had survived, and the dangers that still lurked. Ward's voice was low, almost a whisper carried by the wind. "The numbers aren't finished. They never are. They guide, they warn, they test, but they also show the way forward. And you, Ryan, have proven you can follow." Hale's heart tightened. He understood now. The numbers weren't just codes. They were a lifeline, a map, and a legacy, Ward's gift, a guide for those capable of understanding it, and a weapon against the unseen enemies who thought themselves untouchable. As the team regrouped and prepared to move toward extraction, Hale glanced at Ward. The man who had survived impossible odds, who had been presumed dead, was more than a guide. He was a brother, a mentor, and a reminder of the razor-thin line between life and death. And somewhere in the desert, far beyond the reach of their vision, the rogue network stirred, unaware that their plans had been unraveled, their operatives neutralized, and that the numbers, their path to survival, truth, and justice, had been followed to the letter. Hale knew one thing with certainty. The climax was approaching, the final confrontation was inevitable, and the next steps would define everything: lives, loyalty, and the fate of secrets that should never have been hidden. The desert stretched endlessly, silent now, but Hale felt the tension linger in the wind. Every grain of sand, every shadow, every whisper was a reminder. The numbers had brought them here, and only the numbers would guide them to the end. The Nevada desert was quiet again, almost unnervingly so. The early morning sun had burned off the last remnants of night, casting long shadows over dunes and rocky ridges. Hale crouched behind a jagged boulder, Barrett .50 resting lightly against his shoulder, scanning the horizon. The adrenaline of the previous confrontation still thrummed through his veins, but there was no time to rest. Ward emerged from behind a ridge, moving with the calm precision that had always unnerved Hale. His face, lined from years of survival and the scars of countless battles, was hard and focused. "This is it," Ward said quietly. "The final number. Follow it carefully and you survive. Misstep and it ends here." Hale's eyes narrowed. The rogue network they had exposed was far larger than they had imagined. There were still operatives unaccounted for, hidden across the desert, armed and dangerous. Ward's numbers had led them safely this far, but the last sequence would test everything: their training, trust, instincts, and courage. Diaz adjusted his helmet, voice tight. "Chief, you really think we can finish this, after everything?" Hale exhaled slowly. "We have to. No one else can. And if we fail, they get the files, they erase the evidence, and everything we've fought for dies here." Ward led them toward a rocky ridge overlooking a shallow canyon, the final marker faintly etched into a rock face, 4730-115. Hale traced it with a gloved hand, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and determination. This was it, the culmination of Ward's trail, the final piece of the puzzle. From their vantage point, Hale could see the rogue operatives assembling below, unaware of the trap awaiting them. Automated turrets, carefully placed obstacles, and hidden vantage points lay in wait. Ward had orchestrated this final confrontation like a deadly symphony, with every note, every movement timed to perfection. Ward whispered, "Positions. The first wave comes in 5-4-3. The rogue operatives advanced cautiously, rifles raised, scanning the desert. Hale's team took their positions, following Ward's guidance. Hale's heart pounded, every instinct screamed danger. As the operatives entered the canyon, Ward triggered the first trap, a controlled rockslide that forced them into a narrow corridor, perfect for ambush. Bullets erupted, ricocheting off rock and metal, and Hale fired with surgical precision, taking down 2 operatives while keeping the team protected. The rogue operatives returned fire, but Ward had anticipated their movements. He directed Hale and Diaz, coordinating suppressive fire while maneuvering to high ground. Each shot, each step, each signal was part of a deadly choreography. Hale's focus narrowed. He saw the leader of the rogue network, a figure moving confidently, weapon trained on them. This was the final target, the man orchestrating chaos, hiding operations, and threatening lives. Hale raised the Barrett, hands steady, eyes locked. Ward's voice was calm in his earpiece. "Wait for the opening. Timing is everything." Hale counted, breathing steady, waiting for the precise moment. The rogue leader stepped into a kill zone Ward had prepared. Hale exhaled, squeezed the trigger, and the Barrett roared. The shot was perfect, hitting the target in the chest. The rogue leader crumpled and the remaining operatives faltered. Ward moved swiftly, taking down the remaining threats with deadly accuracy. The desert erupted with the echoes of gunfire and the collapse of automated defenses. Hale felt a strange mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. They had survived the desert gauntlet, neutralized the rogue network, and preserved the critical intelligence. As silence settled over the canyon, Hale and Ward regrouped. Hale's chest heaved, muscles aching from the intensity of combat, adrenaline still surging. Diaz emerged from cover, eyes wide but alive. The team had survived, but the weight of what they had endured pressed heavily on Hale. Ward approached Hale, eyes sharp, yet there was a faint glimmer of something softer beneath the hardened exterior. "You did well, Ryan," he said quietly. You trusted the numbers, trusted instinct, and you survived. That's what it takes to finish this. Hale felt a rush of emotion, relief, awe, and an overwhelming sense of respect. Eli, I didn't just survive because of skill. I survived because you guided us, because you trusted me to follow the path. Ward nodded. The numbers guide, but the person following them makes the choices. You made the right ones, Ryan. That's why you're here and why the mission succeeded. Hale looked out across the desert, sunlight glinting off sand and rock. The rogue network had been neutralized, the files secured, and the threat contained, but the experience left an indelible mark. Every step of the journey, from the Barrett .50's mysterious numbers to the deadly encounters in the canyon, had tested him, pushed him, and revealed the depth of Ward's foresight. Ward placed a hand on Hale's shoulder, firm, reassuring. This isn't the end. The numbers, they're a guide, a test, and a lifeline. Follow them, trust them, and you'll always know the way forward. Hale's gaze drifted to the Barrett .50, the weapon that had led him through the desert, revealed Ward's survival, and ultimately guided them to the truth. The engraved numbers were more than a code. They were a legacy, a map of trust, precision, and survival. Diaz spoke softly, breaking the moment. Chief, what now? Hale exhaled, taking a deep breath. Now, we take the files back, expose the rogue network, and make sure justice is done. But we never forget what we've learned. The desert taught us that trust, timing, and instinct are everything. One misstep and you're gone. Ward nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. And the numbers will always guide you, Ryan. Remember that. They're more than digits, they're life itself. The team moved toward extraction, the desert stretching endlessly around them. Every step forward was a testament to survival, courage, and the bond forged between Hale and Ward. They had faced impossible odds, confronted death, and emerged victorious. Yet the desert, with its silent wind and shifting dunes, remained a reminder. Danger never truly disappears. Hale glanced at Ward one last time. The man who had survived impossible odds, orchestrated a deadly trail of numbers, and guided him through the desert was more than a mentor. He was a brother, a living testament to the power of trust, skill, and precision. As they disappeared into the horizon, Hale understood the true meaning of the numbers. They were not just a code etched into metal. They were a roadmap to survival, a guide through chaos, and a symbol of hope in the face of impossible odds. Somewhere deep in the desert, the rogue network lay broken, their plans exposed, their operatives neutralized. The Barrett .50, the mysterious numbers, and the trust between two men who had survived the impossible had turned the tide. The sun rose higher, illuminating the desert in gold and amber, a symbol of triumph, endurance, and the quiet aftermath of chaos. Hale, Ward, and their team had survived the desert gauntlet, confronted the shadows of betrayal, and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever lay ahead. And though the desert was vast, quiet, and unforgiving, Hale knew one truth above all. The numbers would always guide the worthy, and those who followed them with courage would always find a way through the darkness.